put my
Live doesn't mean don't talk. I'm just telling you.
yeah. Shh.
Is anyone tuning in?
I'm not looking. I'm over putting us on Facebook now, so I don't know.
I don't see any
I
other
sent
squares.
last week those photos, by the way, did you get them? Probably
did.
too late.
Oh, you sent some?
I sent 4 photos. Yeah.
Oh, crud.
Apologize. If it doesn't work, doesn't work. I was scrambling. I actually ran down after my tasting to take pictures and ran back up and loaded them and sent them to you.
Let me. Oh no, I don't have them.
You don't have them? Oh, that's a fine how do you do. Don't worry about it. Do your thing.
Yeah, I don't see them, dude. Oh, maybe they're in junk. No, they're not there either.
No, this is weird. Oh, hold on. Shoot. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it might be my computer.
Hey, Manu.
Oh, is Manu on?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I can't type, just so that you guys know. So
Okay.
I won't be responding to any chats.
Oh, it's Manu, yeah.
All right. Let's see. We got Michael Higgins. Michael's been on a bunch of times watching us. Everwines are back. Cool. Okay. Right on. So,
Oh, the Gurkeys are here. Hey, guys.
all right, sweet. Dave and Susan Gerke. What's up, Michael? Right on. Thanks for joining us again. Cool. All right. Getting a few more people tuned in. I'm waiting to see where we're at over on the Facebook side of things.
Today's Friday, isn't it?
Tomorrow.
No, today's Friday. Tomorrow's a holiday
Oh,
That's true.
for some of us, maybe.
Okay, here we go. There. Now we're on live at Facebook. That had a little hiccup to it. Sweet. Okay, we'll just wait a few seconds here since we had a little lag on getting live on Facebook to let the audience tune in a little bit. So in the meantime, cheers.
drink up.
Cheers.
Kevin, the color on this blend, this Kuhnwas blend,
Yes,
that's cool.
it's pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Pretty kind of Pinot-esque, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Terry, I feel like you have to reply to that one.
Yeah, Terry, you
I'm
should
sorry.
definitely.
Which one? I don't see them. Do
Start
you guys want to
typing
reply for me?
You want me to? Can you read it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hi, Carolyn. Go Dogs. Sorry, guys, you can't get away from it. Might as well just succumb, become Georgia fans.
All good.
That's fine. You gonna talk any football today, Terry?
Only if somebody asks me a question. I won't start it. No,
But can you stop?
probably not. That's the problem.
Best wine pairing with nachos.
What is that a real thing?
When we watch football, we make nachos.
Oh,
What's the best TH wine pairing with nachos?
The one you got open.
All right.
All right, right on.
Depends on whether or not you got jalapenos or not.
All right. We're getting some decent audience figures here, so let's get rolling. People are always a little late logging on and stuff, so
How dare they?
cool. So, hey everyone. Thanks for tuning in for another Paso Wine Hangout. Today we're hanging out with a couple of guys who are going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the vineyard. So the last time we talked about what's happening in the vineyard, we were well into the spring. We were, I guess the term was of that show was elongation. And then of course we've gone through a little bit of fruit set, flowering and fruit set and all that good stuff. And now we're into kind of like the summer vineyard. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about what's happening with that, about these guys' individual thoughts and ideas and observations on where we're at with this vintage, as well as their own vineyards. We'll talk density, we'll talk earth, talk soil. But first I'm going to do a quick little round robin here to introduce you to who all is joining us today. I'm going to start with Kevin Jussila with Kukkula. Kevin, say hello and talk a little bit about yourself and your brand.
Hey, everybody. Kukkula is Finnish first and foremost. Finnish, it said kukkula, means the high place. You can't probably quite tell from here, but I'm sitting on the high place. Our house sits at about 1,800 feet of elevation. The property by and large is really high elevation, 1,450 to 1,900, almost 2,000 feet actually at its highest. Our highest block is right behind me at about 1,850 feet. We're 100% estate grown. We're organic dry farmers. We're Rhone-centric in what we do, and we make almost exclusively blends and Rhone-centric blends. 50 acres of vines planted, and we do it all from the beginning. We grow it, make it, sell it. Love being in Paso. We're in the Adelaide district. This is nirvana, being in this part of the world.
And I'll be able to share an AVA map after a little while to point out where everyone's at and a little bit of where you guys are sourcing, if you're sourcing fruit or where your estates are. So next, Soren Christensen from Hearst Ranch Winery. Soren, say hello.
Hi there, folks. I mean, Kevin, not to brag, but I'm at 6,500 feet right now. I am up in Tahoe.
How many vines do
I'm
you
with
have?
Hearst Ranch.
500 feet.
So Hearst Ranch Winery, our main tasting room is in San Simeon, and it's a view that honestly can't be beat, right overlooking the Pacific Ocean. As far as our vineyard in Paso, and we'll touch a little bit more on this, but we have 56 acres planted, and we've really been trending towards a Bordeaux focus on our vineyard. And today we'll be showing our Malbec, and we'll speak about soil composition and whatnot when we get into the wine. But yeah, really happy to be here, and thanks for having us, Chris.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for joining. Next up, Terry Hoage, TH Estate Wines. Terry.
Hi guys, my name is Terry Hoage with TH Estate Wines in Paso Robles. We're on the west side of the 101 in the Willow Creek district. Elevation seems to be the topic, so we're 1,100 to about 1,250 feet here. Exclusively Rhone wines, Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, Picpoul Blanc, Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, and Viognier. That's about all I got to say.
All right. Well, we'll get into a lot more because I think eventually, Terry, you only have a little bit to say right now, but eventually we're going to have to probably get the hook for you.
You may have to pull me off stage. That's true.
Right on. All right. So where are we right now? We are in kind of a transition period, right? I was talking to Terry about this a little bit earlier. And so I was able to get a kind of an idea on just to kind of set the stage. We're in this transition period now where we actually have fruit. We're kind of leaving that whole vegetative growth phase and starting to transition into how the fruit is maturing on into veraison, which will happen sometime at the end of July and then into August. And that's when fruit starts to actually show itself ripening. These guys will get way more into the technicalities of that. But for now, though, I mean, I was just up actually at Kukkula just the other day. up on that high place that you have there. I mean, an amazing, amazing view that you have there, Kevin. And I got a little chance to see what's happening with your vineyard right now. You have some new plantings that are going on there, and then you're also kind of, also, like we said, in this transitionary stage. But everything looks so vibrant and amazing up there. And you were just talking about that you're a dry farmer. I mean, what's happening on your vineyard right now?
Well, yeah, we're in terms of process, we are through fruit setting. We've already dropped or dropped shoots and dropped fruit, and we've just about finished going through it a second time, dropping seconds. And the vines are looking beautiful, you know, this time of year in particular, but it does feel like it's a really good growing year thus far. We've had a late spring. We've had really quite cool climates. I mean, today we're barely 70 degrees and 15-mile-an-hour winds. And so it's making for a really steady progression of fruit right now. The vines are looking beautiful. Unfortunately, it looks like you didn't get my photographs that I sent you, but the fruit is hanging really nice. We're nowhere close to veraison, but you're probably about half size on the clusters in terms of weight at this point. Everything's looking really quite beautiful.
And hang on, I did take this picture the other day. So I since I didn't get your pictures, but I did take a shot while I was there.
Yeah, that's right about where I'm sitting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of
Yeah.
see the tops of the vines, and you're actually looking at the other side of the this kind of a ravine there where the new plantings are going in. That's Grenache going in there. It's just rootstock at this point, but you're looking at Mourvedre in the foreground there, and Mourvedre is really an easily managed crop. Although I will say that Mourvedre, to get ahead of myself, looks really ugly when it's ready to pick. So right now it's in that beautiful stage. And of course it's planted around my house, and every once in a while I'm tormented when we get into late growing season harvest, and I feel like I've got dead vines around me. But right now it's looking just spectacular.
Yeah, it's looking good. And I had this other picture of you here. Just
Oh, cool.
throw something in there of you and winemaking, right? So, but I'm sorry I didn't get your shots though earlier. So.
Well, that's what happens when I send them last minute, I guess, huh?
Yeah, well, Soren did too, you know, and he did it. He went up to you though. He actually texted me the picture.
Oh, that was funny. Well, I actually sent them to you, and it said it was too big. So then I cut them down in size, thinking that would work, and it whoop sound, and I thought it was gone. But so much for that.
So real quick, here's what we're going to be tasting through. And so Kevin, in his wine, this kukkula wine, the Otto TH Estate, or I'm sorry, TH Vineyards 2017 3-4, and the Babakora Malbec from Hearst Ranch. We'll get into these wines a little later. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's happening in the vineyard. And then I do want to point out here, and if you can see my pointer, so Kevin, he's over here in the Adelaida district, kind of like right about here, right about where the D is. So, and then Willow Creek district, and Terry Hoage, you are right in this little patch here.
Exactly.
And then the estate vineyard anyway for Hearst Ranch is up here in the Estrella district. But the interesting thing from Soren, and where he's going to be up next here, is they also source from a lot of different vineyards throughout the AVA. And so he's going to give us a few insights on what's happening around the AVA as he's been walking vineyards lately. I mean, not obviously today, but lately anyway. So Soren, what are you seeing out there right now? How's the 2020 vintage looking to you?
To kind of reiterate what Kevin was saying, everything is progressing really nicely. It's been a very even and cool year, somewhat predictable to this point, I guess. There's really no curveballs have been thrown our way as of yet. So we're really quite happy. We got a healthy crop on most of the vineyards I'm looking at. So we're shoot thinning a little bit and dropping a little bit of crop, but overall progressing in a really nice, even manner.
Cool. Are you seeing any differences though, say from that home ranch in Estrella to where else are you sourcing from, like Palmar or Geneseo, Santa Margarita?
Yes, and my really boring answer is things look pretty similar to last year for me on a lot of the ranches that we're picking 2 years consecutively. Just real nice even growth, good cluster set, very even fruit development. So it's I haven't seen anything that's hanging too much fruit just yet. We bought from 12 different vineyards this last year, so I haven't made it out to everyone super recently, but everything looks pretty good so far.
Yeah, and then when it comes to the rain this year, I mean, we got our rain pretty late this time around, and we didn't get a lot of it. I mean, I think we're still a little under what we did last year, and last year was pretty wet. As far as seeing how that's affecting, I mean, we're not in drought conditions as of yet, but how is that maybe looking from one to the other? Because, you know, as we know, and we've been talking about on these Hangouts, it's a little wetter as you go towards the ocean and towards into the mountains. That's, you know, that's this thing called orographic lift, where we have a lot more rain dumping in the mountains than in the rain shadow, it becomes less. So as you're walking vineyards and seeing kind of the transitions between more and less water, anything noticeable that way?
I think one of the really important things is that we haven't had many protracted heat spikes just yet. So there's none of the emergency watering going on ahead of a forecast of 5 days over 100 degrees type things yet. So sometimes when you see the weather forecast, we'll go ahead and pretty good set of water on a different vineyard block just to make sure the soil has enough water to hold and to keep the vine healthy through that time. But because it's been a pretty mild, you know, transition from spring into summer, we haven't had to do anything like that yet, which is really quite nice.
Yeah, cool. Right on. Hey, Terry, so you shared a bunch of pictures, and I'm going to get into those here in just a second. But it's pretty cool, actually, all of this stuff. And I hope everyone tune in for this. It's pretty neat what he's been able to share with us. But Terry, talk a little bit about where you guys are at with the 2020 vintage, and I'll start queuing up some of the imagery.
You know, very similar to what these guys have said. We had a really beneficial spring in that we got added rainfall. I think it actually pushed back bud break for us by a couple of weeks. I was afraid that we were going to come out really, really early because it seems like we had a really warm part of winter, and I had a lot of bud swelling, and I was really worried that we might get frosted again, similar to the year where we got snow in April. But we got those rain periods that kind of extended the winter out a little bit. So we're more into a typical growing season, I think. I do a lot of, you got a picture up here, I do a lot of high density plantings here. I started doing those years ago for Justin Smith. He asked me to do a block of unrooted Syrah, 3 feet by 4 feet. And over the past few years, I've been pulling out blocks because of red blotch and replanting, and I'm doing a lot of it in the high density stuff. And those are the two pictures that you showed. And I kind of wanted to show just kind of visually what it looks like to people compared to a traditionally planted vineyard 8 by 5. This is my Grenache planting, and you can see that there's quite a bit of difference. I've gone to the high density because in blocks like that, which is Mourvedre, in the previous block that you showed, which is Syrah, I feel like we get the plants really engaging in kind of a self-monitoring mode, in that I don't really have to go in and drop a lot of fruit in those places. You know, I think I have some pictures of the Syrah berries that you might show later that shows that they kind of get metered, and like I don't get these big long stringy Estrella Syrah clones or bunches. They're much more compact, and the berries are very, very small. So I'm all in on kind of the competitive high density plantings. This is actually a Mourvedre planting, 3 feet by 4 feet. We call it a meter by meter planting. But I put this up just because I kind of wanted to show people one of the benefits that you get from a really large canopy is the kind of the dappled shade that filters its way down into the fruit. So you're not like exposing your fruit to these really high, intense afternoons, which I battled here for years when I first took over the property. And I'm getting, the thing that I found, because most of my hillsides are south and southwest facing, is that sun was not an issue. Shade was my problem. I needed to figure out how to protect my fruit without, and I didn't really want to do shade cloth and stuff. So I do this high density stuff, and you can see kind of the pattern of shade that goes through the block, and it's allowed us to, I think, grow fruit that has a really high in intensity and flavor, but also in elegance. Since I've been doing this type of planning stuff, I think our alcohols have come down from 15.5%, 16% to in the 14s. And I think it's allowed my winemaker, Phil Lallamontagna, to make more elegant wines that still have a really impactful first impression. And, there's not a lot of people that are doing, this is a modified meter by meter block where I interplanted every other row. This is actually Estrella Syrah. And here again, you can just see the proximity of the plants introduces a lot of competition, but also rows shade each other a lot better. And so we're always kind of getting what people are chasing after, that dappled shade.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And I think, other way. This is the other property. We'll get to this one here in a second. This is for Hearst Ranch property. So, but we'll come back around to that. So, but there's that dapple you were talking about. So let's talk a little bit about the wines. Let's go back to that. Whoops, there it is. The first wine that we're looking at, which is this guy right here. And what's the blend on this? Counoise
35
Grenache.
Counoise Mourvedre Grenache.
And talk a little bit about this wine. Kevin?
Well, Otto, first of all, is my father's name. It translates to Eve, as in Christmas Eve. He's born on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is said Jouluotto, so he's a Jouluotto baby. I had experimented at a home in Southern California prior to moving up here many years ago with a little vineyard with Cinsault, and I didn't really dislike it, but I was looking for something different when I came up, and I picked Neil Collins' brain quite a bit about what types of roses I should be planting. And so he gave me the alternative Counoise, which I knew nothing about. And I have since become a huge fan of Counoise. It blows me away that there's so little of it grown in this country. And frankly, I think there's net taking out of acreage in even France. Counoise kind of lends itself to a almost Pinot-like flavor and aromatic, but there's a very kind of high baking spices kind of components to the wine, cinnamon, nutmeg kinds of flavors, tends to be naturally high acid. It's a light looking wine visually, yet it's really a big volume wine. A lot of mid-palate spiciness to it. And I started out this blend thinking that Mourvedre and Counoise would work great. And, in the very beginning, just decided, okay, we're going to experiment with Mourvedre, Counoise, and Grenache in that order. And even in the beginnings, it was, we'll call it 40-38 in the residual, whatever, Grenache. But it was those two grapes that were dominant with Mourvedre in the lead. And I loved it. But over the years, especially in 2010, I had an opportunity that I had extra Counoise left post-blending that I just bottled it and sold it. It was a huge success. People just totally dug it. And I loved it. So I decided to kind of push it as the lead. And so since 2013 vintage, it's been the lead. It's just an amazingly kind of exotic wine in its flavor and aromatic. It's unusual. It tends to be a real attention grabber. When people taste it, they're kind of blown away by it. And it's become a wine that's gotten us a lot of accolades. So I love the wine.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wine. We grew Counoise and Cinsault when I first planted the vineyard here, and we did a few Grenache blends with both of those, and I absolutely loved them. Unfortunately, they were both red blotched, and so got pulled out with a little bit of time, and I would love to go back to it because I would always catch my vineyard workers during their break sneaking into my Cinsault and my Counoise block to pick the fruit because it tasted so good.
Oh, it does.
And when it fermented, it was like a tutti fruity kind of bubblegum smell with a bright pink foam. Absolutely beautiful. And we did a Counoise single varietal for a couple of years, and people did dig it. It was a different, just a different experience for them.
Yeah, it's a very high aromatic wine, and the Otto in particular is, and I think it's certainly reflective of the Counoise, and that's really kind of giving that aromatic lift to it.
Right. So you got the Mourvedre in, which gives a lot of structure. The Grenache, I'm guessing, gives structure as well. But is there something else that you're looking for with the Grenache?
It tends to be a little bit more focused, right? It's a little bit of a spice as well, a sense of kind of earthiness, a little more tannin structure to it. But Counoise itself also has a lot of kind of spice to it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really kind of the tannins, kind of the herbal earth quality that you would kind of get from Grenache more than you would with the Counoise and the Mourvedre. But yeah, Mourvedre is really kind of the backbone, isn't it?
Right.
Muscle behind it. But I think especially Counoise and Mourvedre really work together, even though they're different. They create this sense of kind of viscosity and weight that's really kind of
it's got a little bit more weight to it than you just kind of perceive with the pouring of it.
Yeah.
And how do customers react to that? I mean, it's a beautiful color and looks beautifully refined.
You know, like I said, it's a hugely popular wine for us. I would say that if people were to kind of vote on the favorite wines from Kukkula, Otto would be high up there. And I think it's that aromatic intensity. I think it's the exoticness of the aromatics and the palate. And I think it's the volume building. When you taste this wine, for whatever reason, it feels like it's kind of blowing up in your mouth. It has a really nice curve and the length is amazing with this wine. And people just really react positively to it.
Nice job.
Kevin, is it right that this wine also is really big and popular in Finland?
That was a leading question, I think. Yeah, as a matter of fact, Chris, it's funny you should say that. Well, so I distribute nowhere except for Finland, which might sound a little odd, but I'm a Finnish guy and I'm proud of being Finnish. And so, yeah, I distribute my wine in Finland. It's not much. I have about 5% distribution in Finland, but this year, interestingly enough, it's an older vintage. The 14 Otto was just named the number one in Finland for 2020. So,
so let me just warn you, stay out of Norway.
Okay.
My daughter lives in Norway, and we're taking our wines to Norway. So I don't want to.
Oh, yeah, but what you don't know is my distributor is Norwegian based.
Ah, okay.
Rude, Terry.
I just want to hop in real quick and applaud you, Kevin. I think this is a beautiful presentation. As you mentioned, Counoise and Mourvedre can both be very spicy, sometimes funky wines. And to combine the two of them and have such a beautiful presentation that's really well composed, I think is admirable.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, maybe what I should say here is naivety will get you everywhere, because I had no idea you're not supposed to do it. And usually my best successes are the ones that I didn't know you weren't supposed to do. But what really blows me, one last thought on Counoise is, it is a virused plant, and to Terry's point, by the way, I have red blotch and I'm ripping everything out and I'm replanting, and I am going to get some clean Counoise. But Counoise, relative to other varietals, does not seem to be so impacted by the virus as, say, maybe Cabernet or Zinfandel or Grenache have been. And so it has just really been consistent for me, even though I've already known for a number of years that it's virus. So anyway, I love the fruit.
Right on. Let's go to the next wine. Terry, we're going to put you up next. So what we're looking at here is the 3-4 from TH, 93% Syrah, 7% Mourvedre. And why 3-4, first off? Why is this wine called 3-4?
Oh, all of our, I used to say most of our wines have a double entendre with the naming of the wine. Something to do with football, something to do with winemaking or the wine process. Like I said, the fruit for this comes off of one of the high density blocks that we planted 3 feet by 4 feet, hence 3-4. And then my number was 34 for a lot of years in the NFL, for people who don't know anything about wine or planting densities. Really intense Syrah. It used to be, so Phil has taken over my winemaking. I guess he took it over, at the end of 2016, has been doing a beautiful job. And has actually redirected some of the wines that we've been making. I always made this as 100% Syrah, kind of fully extracted, huge tannins, kind of huge mouthfeel. Phil, and I wanted him to be able to express his own palate in his winemaking, has really focused on elegance. So I think that he's done a really nice job. The alcohol in this, I think, is like 14, in the 14s. That in and of itself in Paso Robles is an accomplishment for a lot of things, unless you're using Counoise. What did you pick Counoise at? Just out of curiosity, probably.
Oh, this vintage, I'd just be making a guess, but yeah, you're lucky to get it at 26 and a half to
Yeah.
27.
I mean, I never got it that right. But Syrah, you have no problem getting right. So when I was making the wines, they were certainly bigger in structure alcohol. But he's doing a beautiful job. I think, probably about 60% new French oak, larger puncheons, probably 20% neutral and 20% once filled. There's a little bit of Mourvedre, and I don't really know why he felt like he needed to bastardize the Syrah 100% with a little bit of Mourvedre, but it probably gives it a little bit more earthiness and grounds it a little bit. But he's done that with a couple of my wines. We had a 46 wine that I made for years and years and years that was a 50% Syrah, 50% Grenache, and he snuck a little Mourvedre in that as well. So it might just be part of his program. This wine we're very proud of in that I feel like it shows not only the varietal of grapes in a really nice light, but in a presentation and the way that you drink it and it fills your mouth. It's a lot of pleasure, and when you swallow it, you want to go back and take another sip. And I'm proud of that fact. In that Phil's created wines that are extremely approachable and extremely well suited for kind of everyday dinners, and they pair with food beautifully.
Yeah,
I could keep rambling, but with no point that I'm going to. I'll turn it over to you and help direct me.
No, this is a fantastic wine. I invite the winemakers though to talk about it, but this wine is deep, it's luscious, it's got a lot of intensity, but it's
but it's not the
delicate.
over the top thing where you're going, oh my God, the alcohols in this thing are 18, 19%. It's like port.
I totally agree. I think this is seamless. It's finessed. It's powerful. There's really luscious fruit on it. There's nice acidity to it, and it's definitely food friendly. I think that it's a bang up job on the wine.
One thing that I've learned over the course of 20 years since I've been doing this is the importance of acidity in your wines.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people. I feel like when they start to lose the acidity, they really start to lose the structure and the ageability of the wines. And I think even if you're carrying too much acid early in a wine's life, that will balance itself out in time. Yeah. Just look at Burgundy wine, that you have to put down for 15 years before you can even approach them. So I love the fact that we're making wines that have an acidity that allows for aging, and it allows for food pairings and the whole fat acid conversation.
This wine has evolved quite a bit. I popped the cork maybe, 45 minutes ago, and it's really lengthened quite a bit, and it's become very, very elegant. This is I think this has a lot of years left in the bottle. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic.
I think everything that you're saying that so far, both you guys have said about your wines is very much a thing about that is a standout for Paso. We can get fruit right. The acidity the natural acidity that comes from the fruit from Paso Robles is definitely very vibrant and very, very much there. That can help wines age, but also make them so food friendly and so enjoyable and pleasurable to drink, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of drink me nows. So let's talk about the Malbec though. So this one's up from Hearst Ranch. So Soren.
All right. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind, can you throw the map back up?
Yes, I can.
So, We are right on, essentially on the bank of the Salinas River. And so our Malbec is planted in very, very sandy soil. So it has almost no water holding capacity whatsoever. So that's almost from the view of our Malbec looking up to our hilltop. But if you go to the map, the AVA map, so the Estrella Riverbed, is that really in there, kind of? Yeah, you can see the Estrella River. So very sandy soil. So we get intense concentration out of this wine. We've affectionately named this the Eeyore block, like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, because it holds whatsoever. So you water it, and everything looks really happy, and like 20 minutes later, just like looks a little bit sad. So we have started utilizing soil moisture meters over the last 5 or 6 years, and we've sunk moisture meters at different areas of the vineyard at depths of 36 inches, 24 inches, and about 15 inches. Because if we just depended on visual cues from our Eeyore Malbec, we'd be watering it constantly. But it's nice to have some numerical data to back up our watering decisions. But it's an old clone, 595, planted on 5C. It's been in the ground for almost 30 years, but it has amazing intensity to it. So because of that water starvation, if you will, we always get amazing aromatics and really, really bright fruit character. And much like Terry was saying, how Phil kind of sneaks more Vedra into everything, I use Malbec in all of our Bordeaux blends. And I kind of joke that it's almost like Botox. It's so bright and perky, it really elevates the aromatic and flavor profile of Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot. So the trick for doing a Malbec bottling for us is we'll often add in, such as we did in this wine, there's a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon, 10%, and 13% Petit Verdot to lengthen out the profile of the wine. So it has aromatics and flavor profile up front in spades, but we added those 2 other varietals to really kind of lengthen out the presentation. But it's just super bright and vibrant, and it's really become one of my favorite wines that we make off the estate.
It's got really nice, lush, rounded, soft tannins. Do you do anything in particular? Is that just barrel selection? Or
So,
are you aerating things, or what are you doing?
one of the things that all 3 of us have mentioned today is a little bit of red blotch. So we have some virus vines in there, and one of the ways it manifests itself is with quite high nitrogen levels. And so in order to have a nice slow fermentation, we keep the temperature really, really low on fermentation, because if my nitrogen's high, it can just absolutely spike through a quick fermentation. So we'll ferment at 70, 75 degrees for 3-4 weeks and really kind of lean back on the pump overs and aeration.
Right.
It extends out our fermentation nicely and also keeps the fruit profile very, very bright without getting too drying of a tannin profile.
Yeah, we actually stopped trying to slow our fermentations down. We come in with a little bit of nitrogen in my Syrah, and I used to sell it to Justin, and literally we would go through a fermentation in 2 days. Yeah. And you go from 28 bricks to 12 bricks to 0 in 2.5 days. Temperatures would get into the mid 90s. I just decided to kind of leave that alone because I was getting such beautiful, like fruit forward wines. You still have a lot of fruit in here, even though you're doing it nice and chilled.
So nice and slow. Yeah, we keep it low. It's predominantly neutral oak. There's a 10 to 15% new oak on this. And we go to barrel pretty darn clean. So I don't rack once it's in barrel. It'll go into barrel in, whenever, middle of October, and we won't pull it out. We actually just bottled our 2018 Malbec on Tuesday. Okay. So it stays in there for the duration. So I don't like to aerate the wines too much. And if I go to barrel clean, I don't have any reason to rack them in the interim.
Settling in a tank before you barrel down?
We'll let it sit a couple days. I'm very, very fortunate in that I have a good amount of tanks relative to our volume. So I'm not hard pressed to get stuff out of tanks super, super fast to turn them over.
Yeah.
It's just amazing when you can see people have almost completely different ways of making wine, and they both end up the same. I mean, we go, we press off, we go to barrel dirty, we'll blend, dirty with all the lees in it, and not take it off the lees until we're actually like putting it in barrel to bottle, and then letting it set for a few days. Like completely different protocols that kind of go to the same place. Kind of interesting.
Hey, Soren, there was a question about how many acres are you farming over in the Estrella district?
We have 56. And as I mentioned quickly in the opening, so we have, most people would say there's 5 Bordeaux varietals we have of reds. We've planted some Carmenere also. So we have Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Malbec, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and we had a 1 acre little kind of wedge that we planted to Carmenere. So I'm really excited to see how that turns out. So 56 acres. We are very much a southwest exposure. Most of the vine rows are planted north-south. So what we're doing this time of year is we're pulling a lot of leaves on the east-facing side of the block to allow that filtered sunlight like Terry was talking about. So we want to get some speckled sunlight coming through, but if we pull it on the morning sun side, it doesn't beat up the clusters in the afternoon.
You can always go to high density.
Laurent Goblet.
Hey, why is this wine called Babacora? What's the story?
So all of our wines are named after either a focal point on Hearst Ranch in San Simeon, or was a Hearst property. So William Randolph Hearst it was over a 1 million acre cattle ranch down in Mexico. And it was a feeder ranch, as far as I know. I might have to check my facts on this one, but it was a feeder ranch for cattle into the San Simeon property way back when. So it's a fun name to say, Babacora.
Yeah.
Bless you, Kevin.
I think I might have to get a glass of water. Bear with me 30 seconds. Let's keep talking.
Let's talk about him. Well, he's gone.
I think you can still hear us.
So what I'd like to talk about next, though, because now that we've gotten through the wines and maybe we can revisit them as they're still opening up and everything as we go. But we've mentioned red blotch now a few times, and I thought it would be good if we could maybe for the audience define what is red blotch, and why are we pulling out vines and replanting? I don't know who wants to take that one, but
Well,
I'll start because
for me, I think he should start.
yeah, Terry.
I've been fighting red blotch since I bought my property in 2002. There was actually a portion of the vineyard that was the 5 acres that were already here that was red blotched, and I would take it to all of the people that I respected in the industry, and I would show them this fruit, and I'd be like, "What's wrong with this? There's no flavor. It's like a waterberry. The plants are shutting down." And this is before anybody knew what red blotch was. And, every year it would happen. I would grow up these beautiful vines. We would prune them back. And, I like to do basically dry farming or deficit irrigation, because I irrigate in the winter, not during the summer if I can get away with it. But these plants, as soon as I would stress them, all the leaves would turn, they would fall off, and then wouldn't ripen the fruit. A few years later, Jennifer, my wife, was reading an article and she showed it to me, and I read it and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is what I have. I have red blotch." And nobody really knew what it was. But, I farmed my Counoise and Cinsault, which were both red blotched at the very beginning, and I absolutely loved them, but I almost did it hydroponically. And then I would take leaf petioles and see what the plant was missing, and then I would give it to it in its irrigation just to get it all the way to veraison and then to hopefully ripen the fruit. I think the basic thing that people need to understand about red blotches is once it's a virus, just like a virus that gets into our bodies, but once the virus starts to be expressed, the vine goes into a shutdown. And it starts much like probably we make a fever to try to kill the virus. The plant just says, "I can't do this anymore," drops all of its leaves and kind of senesces and goes into like a little hibernation. It's really, really hard to get fruit ripe on plants that are truly virused. So that's my start. Kevin, you're dealing with it now.
It's interesting that you say this, because I started realizing, well, first of all, I planted my whole vineyard, and the first plantings were 2006, and I finished planting around 2013. I planted 50 acres over that time. And so everything was beautiful for the first 4 or 5 years. You really don't have any fruit. And then year 6, it was nice. 7 was nice. Year 8 started seeing some issues. But where we started seeing issues was not with respect to ripeness, but was with respect to pH relative to a specific Brix level. So if I'm going to pick at 26 Brix, I want to see a 3.5, 3.6 ideally on a pH. And, early years, I would see a 3.3, 3.4, 3.5. It would be at or lower than what I thought I would like to pick at. And then when we start to get to 2012, all of a sudden we start to see 3.7s, 3.8s, 3.9s, and each year it got higher and higher. And so I never had a problem with ripeness ever. Throughout this whole thing, I've been able to get 28 bricks if I chose to get it, which I thought was odd. And so in the early years, because nobody knew anything about this, the conversation was about bricks freezing at 21 or 22 or something like that, losing your canopy. I didn't lose my canopy. I didn't have a problem with ripeness. I had elevated pHs. And then I started to notice that the extraction, colors were starting to kind of get less and less intense, and a little bit more of a brickishness to the vines. And I attributed this, as did viticulturists that we brought to the property to take a look at what was going on, because when this started getting noticeable was in 2012, essentially the first year of the drought. And so each year we were dealing with this as how do we change the canopy management relative to the drought years? Maybe it's something we were doing things like overcropping, undercropping, and splitting blocks, overcropping, undercropping, changing how we and where we dropped our fruit and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't seem to make any difference. We each had progressively higher and higher pH each year. And I finally capitulated when I started to realize, damn, this isn't the descriptive that we're getting, but maybe I better check. So I submitted 5 blocks for testing, and all blocks came back positive for red blotch. So for me, it just got to the point where I started to realize it's the visual inspection of the plant. I didn't have a problem with the canopy. You would start to see pressure would develop right around August when it's the hottest time of year, when you're certainly in veration, you're getting close to harvesting. And you start to see that red veinal stuff happening, and you start to see a little bit of red blotches happening on the vines. And that's kind of the obvious visual trigger for us, but it didn't manifest it. Oh, we started to have big drops in yields. I have a beautiful Mourvedre block behind me, 3.5 acres, and we get about, lately, 1/3 to 1/2 ton an acre. It's really sad. Beautiful fruit, but it's really sad.
I mean, I have 18 acres planted. We've replanted 120% of it because I had to pull out a couple of blocks twice because I put in stuff that ended up being virused as well, and then had to immediately pull that out because it leaks over into the rest of your vineyard as well. So I mean, it doesn't just stay isolated in one block. It travels, with the whatever is carrying it from block to block. And so it's a relatively difficult thing to rid yourself of, once you have it kind of in your area. I'm lucky all my neighbors have replanted as well with virus-free stuff. So we really lowered the chances of contamination across the fences.
What carries it? I mean, I thought I heard something like the leaf hopper or whatever, but
like a 3-cornered hat leaf hopper or something like that. But I will guarantee you that it's just your run-of-the-mill leaf hopper because I had a block, that high density block of Mourvedre that you showed up there, that used to be, and I got the cuttings from a very good friend, very famous guy. But all of his cuttings were red blotched, and I grafted over a section of my Grenache to that Mourvedre, and then in the years following, I basically watched the virus march through my Grenache and infect it. You could see it every fall, this kind of random walk through the vineyard. So I never really used to worry about leaf hoppers. Now I'm very diligent in making sure that we're eradicating them to the best of our ability. And what we found is that we don't see kind of like the spread like we're seeing of coronavirus through the vineyard.
Well, we got all of our leaf hoppers to wear masks, so it's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. If I could just get mine to do that.
Yeah. Just ask them nicely. It's easy. Yeah.
So your neighbors are replanting because then, leaf hoppers don't understand fences clearly. I mean, they'll just, they'll go through fences. And
I feel very fortunate that all of the people around me understood kind of the significance of what was going on. But I did have to pull out a couple of blocks because I was next to neighbors whose block was infected, and I got reinfected and had to pull it out. And I think they saw me go through that, and they understood kind of the seriousness of what we were trying to get accomplished. So
now, assuming
we're 100%, we're all replanted and free now. So
assuming now with the neighbors replanting, you're replanting, and you're creating these buffer zones. I mean, it's not in the soil. It's not going to come and manifest itself again somehow. I mean, but there's no real guarantee though, right?
No,
There's none.
there's no cure yet for it either.
Yeah.
But it's not to
Although-
say every leaf hopper has or can transmit red blotch. It feeds on an infected vine, and then if it goes and feeds on an infected vine in a neighboring vineyard block, that's how it can spread. But it's not to say that every single leaf hopper is carrying it.
Right.
Although, not that I want to talk about vaccinations right now, but what I've been reading is that they are in the process, kind of in the central part of the United States, for different crops, mostly row crops. They're using the CRISPR gene to be able to change and go into plants that have a virus and extract the virus out of the DNA. So they're doing it in like watermelons and squashes and cantaloupes and like things like that, where they actually can have infected plants, and they go out and they spray their spray with the CRISPR gene with the correct DNA. It soaks through the plant and actually gets into the DNA of the plant and cures it of the virus. So I think in 10 years, 15 years, we will see an application that we'll be able to use so you won't have to replant. You'll be able to go through and spray this carrier of the CRISPR gene and change the DNA of your plants so you can just extract that red blotch. I'm hopeful for that.
Cool.
Exactly.
Technology. We're going to have a technology show actually here in a few weeks. So just a little pitch on that one, but that is pretty cool. So I'm looking for any questions from our audience, but we do have one that Terry is very specifically for you. It's a little off topic. Oh, you know what? Somebody just popped in and wants to know if this problem happens in all areas of Paso. And Soren, maybe you want to speak to this since you're running around, going into other vineyards all over the place. I mean, how rampant is red blotch right now in our area?
I wouldn't say it's rampant. There's nothing to say that our vineyard that was planted almost 30 years ago didn't have some degree of red blotch when it was planted. It wasn't something that we were testing for way back when. Like Terry said, he didn't know to look for it until his wife said, hey, this looks similar to what I just read about, kind of thing. So all new vines that are going in are being tested for it ahead of time. It's not a death sentence overnight if your vines happen to have red blotch. It's just something it can be a slow decline. It also can be a rapid one, but if you find you have vines that are in distress and you treat them well and kind of ease them into retirement, you can actually get some productive years out of them, as it sounds like the three of us all have on different vineyards. So I wouldn't say it's a rampant problem, but it's something that we're all very much aware of. And
I think it's pervasive.
Yeah, I think it's more pervasive than you might be thinking. And two, I think the question was maybe broader, which is, where are you finding red blotch? Last I read, it was over 17 states that had it, and most notably in places like California, Oregon, and Washington, which would stand to reason since it's heavier vineyard.
I would fair to guess that it's a relatively common issue for most people that haven't replanted their vineyard specifically to be virus-free. In existing vineyards, I would say that if you went through and tested, you would find quite a few vineyards that would have it. To the extent that they have it, would vary.
Well, and I think I might be a good example too. I planted in 2006 the first time. That it seems that the newest vineyards between 2000 and 2010 had the biggest problems, which pretty well.
I was buying my vines exactly during that period of time. So
so it was, pretty pervasive in the nurseries, and they didn't know about it, and they passed it on to us.
Right.
Yeah. And that can be a real pisser, considering you got to wait 3 years before you're actually starting to see,
Well,
right?
that is one of the most frustrating things that I found, because like for my Counoise and my Cinsault block that I had that I love so much, I mean, for 3 years, it looked absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. These canopies, because I'm dropping all the fruit, they're not having any stress. They're very, very happy. The first year that I put a little bit of stress and I hung some fruit on them and asked them to do some work, they were, totally against it. They were like, no, I don't want to carry any fruit. So it was a battle. It was a constant battle.
Back to that off topic, and we can come back to topic, but this one has been sitting for a little bit here, so I wanted to get on it. So a little off topic for Terry. How many collegiate interceptions and how many NFL receptions during his professional career?
12 in college? No, 14 in college? I don't know. 16, 18. I don't think they count your interceptions in postseason, because I had like 4 interceptions in postseason. I don't know, 16 or so.
Remind everybody where you played, please. I'm sorry, I don't remember, but
Huntsville High School, University of Georgia, New Orleans Saints, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Redskins, San Francisco 49ers, Houston Oilers before they were the Titans, and Arizona.
thank you.
Sounds like I couldn't hold a job.
Sounds like you did quite well.
Okay, I'm going to stay off topic. Terry, can Jeff Fisher take a sip of wine without getting his mustache soaked with wine?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's a big moment. It's like
Because he doesn't really groom it that well. I mean, I think that if you keep it groomed above the upper lip a little bit, he'd have a better chance. But no, and he's a beer drinker anyway.
Awesome. I almost don't want to really go back onto topic, but my kind of almost last question in this kind of red blotchy thing, Kevin, when I came to your property the other day, yeah, I was thinking, my kids actually asked me a really interesting question. They said, does he have to replant that entire vineyard by hand? And your vineyard is like this. I mean, the slope is just crazy. And you're having to replant that guy. And I remember last year, around maybe, fall, not 2019, but I think it was 18 or so, when we went through that vineyard. I mean, that was a really strong vineyard. The vines were absolutely tall with a big canopy. We hiked up that hill. It was not easy. We actually had to help one of our journalists get up to the top, as I recall. But that's a lot of work that you're going through to.
I picked an easy property, didn't I?
Yeah, you're easy.
Yeah. I mean, so what's the question really? Yeah, it's steep.
Yeah, by hand. I mean, that's
yeah.
Here to understand is that if you're replanting an entire vineyard because of red blotch or whatever it might be, that is not just a kind of plug and play. You are out there and you're redoing everything, and it's all 100% by hand.
Well, luckily, I'm paying some people to help me out, so I'm not out there pulling every vine and planting every vine. But yeah, it's Terry went through the same thing. His property is relatively steep, certainly not as steep as ours, but this is all what we do in the boutique world. It's all really done by hand. I mean, in terms of ripping stuff out, you use heavy equipment to kind of push out and rip and clean. But in terms of gridding and staking and planting and, just the whole infrastructure, it's all done by human feet and hands. And it's slow and arduous. But, I think the reward for farming property like this is exceptional fruit. Living in beautiful, dramatic country. I mean, the tapestry around here it's beautiful. I can't think of too many places that are more beautiful than this. So it's kind of the price you pay for living in a place like this. You grow beautiful fruit, you make great wines, but there's a lot of work behind this. This is not an easy business.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of where I was getting at, because it's a long investment, as I had mentioned earlier, with the 3 years before you actually see something. And then after that, to have to go through and completely redo everything all over again that's not an easy task by any means.
Yeah, and to clarify, actually, it's really more than 3 years. I mean, when you tear out, at least in my case, and I think Terry, you did the same thing, we're leaving it 2 years fallow. So you tear out, you're 2 years without a crop, then you plant it. You're essentially, if you're lucky, 6 years before you get your first fruit. And you're 8 to 9 years before you get your first bottle to the consumer. So you're talking almost a decade on the turnaround.
It is time consuming.
Yeah.
There's no question.
All right, right on. Any last thoughts? What's happening with you guys coming up here pretty soon? Do you guys have any virtual tastings or anything happening? Soren, you're up in the mountains. You're chilling. I'll start with you though. What you got going on here?
Geez, I mean, for the time being, we're just super excited to be open again in our tasting rooms in both San Simeon and Paso. We're doing them by appointment now to allow as much spacing as possible. But as far as at the winery, I finished bottling on Tuesday, and we're just kind of easing into harvest, getting our last few plans put together. But I've got a nice kind of few months to ease on into harvest here and wait for the storm to hit.
Right on. Kevin.
Yeah, actually, Chris, I have a home on a lake up in northern Ontario where I'm born. And every summer we spend 5 weeks as a family there. And this is the first year in a really long time that we can't go because the Canadian border is closed. So after a whole bunch of kind of whatever discussions and arguments and vacillations about what we do, or do we take a vacation, I am officially, as of Sunday, on a 5-week staycation, and I'm gonna make the most of it. So most of my work is done until, Soren said, until we are at or close to harvest. Maybe the good news this year is I'm here even though I'm on vacation, so I'll be a presence, and everybody has to be super vigilant in the field, and I'll go out and do kind of spot inspections direct, which is, probably good for everybody. But things are looking really good. We're excited. We don't know what the summer's going to give us in terms of weather and how the crop's going to develop, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'd make a real quick point though. We didn't talk about this, but we know that a lot of counties around us have closed as of yesterday, and San Luis Obispo City closed all bars and wineries last night, and SLO County has been spared. So I just tell everybody, let's help each other, practice what we're supposed to practice, and be safe so we can all stay in business. You guys can enjoy your weekends, and we can stay in business.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, if you're really itching to sit by a lake, Terry's got a little one that you can go hang out at. Just make sure you're wearing your mask.
I got a pool and a pond. Pond would be good for you. Yeah. I love Caddyshack.
That was great. Good pull. Terry, what do you got?
So we're still in the midst of kind of replanting stuff as well as producing stuff. So we're running the gamut of things right now. We have vines that are 1 or 2 years old that we're continuing to kind of shepherd to adulthood. At the same time, we have a lot of our high density stuff in the back, which is actually doing extremely well. We had great fruit set in the Syrah, perfect, didn't really have to do any work there. Grenache, this is one of the first years in a long time where I didn't have any shatter. So we've actually had to send some people through there to adjust the crop load. We just got done with a Picpoul Blanc. So we're just kind of prepping things for veraison so that when the plants are ready, they have the appropriate fruit load to ripen. Just as well as making sure that the vines that are in their first or second year are getting the attention that they need and deserve. And I'll certainly be happy when this replanting thing is over, because it has been dragging on for quite a long time. But I'm extremely excited about what we're doing. I have to say, I almost feel guilty in Paso Robles for being a fruit grower or a winemaker, in that we are in the perfect climate, in my opinion, to grow grapes, more so than any other AVA in the world that you want to compare us to. As a wine grower, disease not aside, it's one of the easiest and best places to grow fruit, because you can do stylistically almost any variety that you want and almost any style that you want. That's what our climate and our soils and everything give us as winemakers here the opportunity to do. So we're just trying to take the most advantage of that and do the best job that we can. We're open. We're doing tastings out by our pond. And we're by appointment. Face masks in the winery, trying to be responsible citizens and not infect other people. But also I understand that a lot of people want to get out of their house and have a little bit of fun. So there's really no place that they could pick that would be better than Paso Robles. and all of the hosts and the host wineries that are here to serve them.
All right. Hey, let's do a teaser really quick for next week's show. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Paso Wine Video Vault. You know, a couple of years ago when the Wine Spectator used to do their wine video awards, the Paso Wine region actually, of all things, the first 3 years won the first 3 awards. It was 2 independents, and then it was us actually with our Paso Wine Man, our very first Paso Wine Man video. And so what we're going to be doing is talking about awardee number 2 and awardee number 3, of course, us. So we'll have a few guests on that were all a part of that, including kind of myself, because I was a part of that whole process too. So as a moderator and guest, I'll be talking a little bit about those videos back then. We'll have our guests, we'll have the Paso Wine Man, the director, and the previous awardee to us as well, Joel Peterson. So we'll be having a little fun and showing the videos and just kind of talking story basically. So thank you, Terry. Thank you, Soren, Kevin. Cheers, you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, guys. It was a lot
Appreciate
of
you
fun.
being on.
Thanks for giving me wine from my vacation, guys.
Oh, you're
Good.
welcome.
Likewise.
Yeah, I know they're already empty.
Right on. All right. Well, we'll see you. Check PasoWine.
You opened up beautifully.
Right on. Check
Thank you.
PasoWine.com for all of the Zoom hangouts to see when the future shows are coming. We've got a few really fun ones out there that we're going to be talking about technology. We're going to be talking to Kenny Volk and people that have been influenced by Kenny Volk. So a bunch of really fun shows coming up here this month. So please check it out. Whew. Thank you. See you
Thanks
guys.
for having me.
Thanks,
It was a lot
guys.
of fun.
24th.
Take care, guys.
Later.